Hey guys, I just wanted to do a video while it's still fresh in my mind on the Scram, riding it from Land's End to John O'Groats. It's a trip I do. It's called the Garbage Run because it started out doing it on small bikes and it's gradually got bigger and bigger, bigger bikes even. So it's a 7-day adventure camping, all the back roads, a little bit of motorway around Bristol if you choose to, and then avoiding A roads, dip into, not quite into Wales, but up to the Peak District, Yorkshire Dales, Cumbria, and over the border, up sort of west of Glasgow and a little ferry and across Inverary, and then up, pick up the NC500 as it goes to Applecross. I also stay on Skye and then go all the way around to John O'Groats. So it's about 1,400 miles and it's a really good test. It's a really good test of a bike because you're living with it day to day. You're learning to realise what it's good at and what it's not good at. I mean, the Himalayan, in fairness for a Land's End John O'Groats trip, is absolutely perfect because the pace of the roads suits the pace of the engine. You've got all the practicality of being able to carry the stuff. It's comfortable, cheap to run, good fuel economy, and it'll do it day in, day out. I mean, obviously the Himalayan with the engine, the 411 engine, might run out of puff if you're doing a lot of motorway miles, but that's not the kind of riding I tend to do. The Scram, if anybody's not aware, is pretty much a Himalayan. It's the same chassis, same engine, same forks, although there's a slight difference in ground clearance and travel, but it's only minuscule, so it's not even worth referencing it because it's so tiny. The big difference is the 19-inch front wheel. I mean, what I found on the flowing roads, back roads, B roads, is that it is more alert, more darty, more divey. Not necessarily twitchy, but it errs more towards twitchy than the Himalayan. If I'm honest, I probably prefer the handling of the Himalayan because it's so steadfast, resolute. Once it carves a line or pick a line, it will stay in that line forever. Yes, it takes a little bit more effort to turn, maybe a bit more input with the counter steer, but once it's set on a line, it'll stay there, whether it's blowing a gale or it's a rut or whatever. The Scram just feels that little bit more twitchy, more alert, more darty, which for some people is going to be a good thing. And if you're just scratching around the back roads, it probably is a good thing. For travelling, I probably still prefer the stability of that 21-inch front wheel. What I did find, the seat comfort on the Scram is better than the Himalayan. That's a stock seat. I didn't have any covers on it or anything, and I could do full day rides on that. The standard Himalayan seat is not the best after a few hours, and I used to, well, always have had a cool cover on that just to give it the full day usability. The Scram straight out the crate, that seat is better. I like that seat. Also, ergonomically, not having a screen meant less buffeting. You know, it's kind of ironic that the screen causes buffeting, but without a screen, you don't get the same amount of buffeting. From a visual point of view, I think more people are attracted to this bike. I think people take more notice of it. So if that's an important element of owning a motorcycle to you, that people inquire or look at it and admire it, I think the Scram probably ticks more boxes than the Himalayan and probably attracts a slightly younger audience. That's what some of the comments I've had. You know, that's a young person's bike, that's an old person's bike. I wouldn't necessarily agree, but I think that's probably the way it is. The Euro 5 engine, definitely, certainly in the Scram, feels smoother, quicker pickup, more refined at the bottom end. There is new fuel injection or new ECU changes on this one. It'll only be subtle, and the changes are subtle, but it does make a difference on the slow speed pickup. What I found is, say when you're working up some of the tight passes in third gear or second gear, you could roll on and off the throttle really smoothly. There was none of that sort of single cylinder chatter that you sometimes get. Certainly with the early Himalayans, the Euro 5 Himalayan remedies that. But the Scram just seemed that little extra bit refined. Whether they've made changes to the Scram over the Euro 5 Himalayan, I'm not entirely sure. But it just felt very smooth on the throttle, very refined. It had taken out some of the roughness that you used to get with the original Himalayan engine. I think by removing some of the practicality of the bike, it actually puts more focus on the engine, and therefore sometimes the discrepancies of the engine in the power department, because it looks sharper, because it handles better, because it's more of a day-to-day road bike than a travel bike like the Himalayan. I think it puts a little bit more pressure on the engine to perform, and obviously with 24.5 horsepower, it's only going to perform to that extent. So I think there's times when you want to come out the corner on the power and you expect it because you're on that type of bike. You know, you look down, you're on a little naked bike, you think, I'm going to have a big wallop of power coming in now. My clocks are all modern and fresh, and therefore I'm going to have a nice juicy thrust of torque. And then you've still got that sort of single cylinder long stroke 411cc engine, burbling out the corner. And so sometimes the look and image of the bike doesn't match the engine performance, something that you don't necessarily get on the Himalayan, because you look at that, it's a dowdy bike, it's practical, the performance matches the image. It works. I mean, that's not to say the Scram is a slow bike, and it almost bothers me when people ride some of these bikes and say they're too slow. Well, actually, most of the time, it's their riding that's not fast or too slow. These bikes, you've got to hustle them. You've got to use momentum. You've got to use cornering speed. You've got to use smoothness and refinement. And I think some riders maybe don't have that to get the most out of a bike like this. I think if you grew up learning on 125s and things like that, and you learned how to eke every brake horsepower out of a bike, these aren't slow. They just take a different technique. If you learn on a big bike, mid-sized bike, went onto a big bike, got used to the big thump of power to sort of compensate for your lack of cornering speed, then they are going to feel slow. So I think there needs to be a bit more honesty in your type of riding as to whether these are slow or not, because if you keep these on the boil, keep them revving, get them through the hustle and through the corners, they'll keep ahead of anything. They're not a slow bike because they handle so well. The suspension for a budget bike is always been, for me, the Himalayan's strongest point. To have a bike that rides so well, so supplely, but also corners with so much agility and precision, it is a real fine art, and obviously it's carried over in the Scram. So yes, what it lacks in outright burst of speed, it makes up for in the fact that every ounce of power you can get from it and exploit. So a slow bike, it's not. You just have to recalibrate your brain to get the most out of it. So yeah, I enjoyed the Scram. It was a good bike for the job. The price point at £100 less than the Himalayan, I'd still go with the Himalayan. It just offers more. It offers the same experience, but with more practicality. That you can put a centre stand on the Scram, you can put a rear rack on the Scram, but then you're turning it into a Himalayan. So, but the visuals, the nice sight, because people say, can you get these side panels for the Himalayan? Well, you can't kind of creating a Frankenstein then, really. If you just want the good visuals of the Scram and the smaller front wheel for the agility, then maybe you're just better buying a rear rack which does fit and a centre stand which does fit, and then you've got that hybrid. The alternative, and I'd be interested to see how it rides, is a Himalayan with the Scram front wheel, because then you've got the practicality of the Himalayan with the agility, if you want it, of the Scram. But Royal Enfield have done, it's a marketing job, this is. It's hard to get as excited about this as I did about that, because there's no marketing in that bike. That is just an engineer, a team of people who went away to build a bike to conquer the Himalayas on the smallest amount of money possible. They built that. There's no sort of hidden face of that bike. It is what it is. Nobody's trying to puff it up, sell it, to pretend it's something it's not. The Scram, it's a marketing bike. It's a bike that somebody in a marketing department's gone, I know what, we could sell more Himalayans if we took away all the practicality, made it a bit jazzy, put some bright colours on, away it goes. And it works. From that point of view, it's a great success. But the earnest, honest appeal of the Himalayan, for me, will always shine above the Scram. That's not to the Scram's detriment, because for the ride from Land's End, John O'Groats, it was a great bike. It was a great bike, perfect for the job, plenty of power, comfortable all day, and economy of sort of 90 miles per gallon, which you just, in this day and age, you just can't fault. So that's it. I hope it's maybe helped you make a decision between a Scram and a Himalayan, but probably not. So you're on your own on that one. Cheers.